Today we're going to be watching Officer Tatum's Sonny Hostin has midlife crisis on air over systemic racism.
So for her to casually
what about the Voting Rights Act? What about Jim Crow laws?
Right.
I mean, I don't...
The anti-lynching law
we're not
passed the other day.
racist country, but I am the only person on my father's side of the family who has enjoyed full civil rights.
Yeah.
In the history of my family, and I am 55 years old. So this is not something that happened 600 years ago, okay? And we're still in the fight of our lives to save the soul of this country from the scourge of racism. That is the truth. They're not going to go for Nikki Haley.
Well, there's so many parts of that aspect of the racism thing that bother me. It bothers me because she's not stupid. She's not ignorant. She's not racist, but she's pandering to a base. She reminds me of a human version of those windsocks that you see in front of used car dealerships.
Yeah.
She will bend to whichever way the wind blows. And she, very casually said about all men are created equal. That did not include African Americans, did not include women. She said, we fixed it along the way, as if it was a typo that they said, you know what, let me fix that. Let me cross that out and put, no, it took a civil war. 700,000 almost Americans died in that civil war. You know what the equivalent of 700,000 Americans are today?
Stop this woman. Stop this woman. You see how convenient she said it's 700,000 Americans? No, lady. It took 700,000 white people died so black people can be free. If that's what you want to say. It's funny and that they bring up the Civil War and they say black people were in bondage. It took a war for black people to be free. Oh, really? Who died in that war?
Right.
White people.
Right.
So you're talking about America is so bad and full of racism that white people are the ones died to free black people. Black people didn't die to free black people. White people died to free black people.
And that's pretty interesting because the rhetoric and the talking points that I've always learned throughout even school and outside of school, just through cultural experiences, I've only understood it to be black people that fought in the Civil War up until I started this YouTube journey and I learned through the great Thomas Sowell, who I think should be president, that is not necessarily the case. And then that furthered my curiosity to go learn about there were African American slave owners, and then I learned about the Republican and the truth behind the Democratic Party as well. Like you just go down this rabbit hole once you find out things like this.
And white people help black people become free. Where do you think Harriet Tubman? Who was she working with? She was with Aladdin on a red carpet. You think she went to La La Land? Good white people helped in the Underground Railroad to free black people from the South. These people, the disingenuous nature of racism, it like makes me question everything that they tell us in history. I took Africana studies in college. We learned about slavery. We learned about all of these different things. People are so disingenuous when they act like the entire country was a country of slavery. It was the South that had legalized slavery in the Confederacy, not the North. The Union never had slaves. And then, so half of the country never had slaves. The other half had slaves. And then the war was fought. In the part of the country that never had slaves won the war. And is now leading, I would argue, leading the country. The Union won, and the Union way is where we see the country today. So the white people that never had slaves defeated the white people that had slaves. Y'all still acting as if the legacy of this country is rooted in slavery. If you want to argue the truth, the legacy of the country is in the Union because the Union won. And therefore the victorious country that ended up spreading from the north to the south and conquering the entire United States of America was the group of people who never had slaves. Okay. And then they don't never want to tell you about black people that had slaves. If you go back and look at the history of slavery, you start to realize that it had minimal to do with race.
Yes, you start to realize that it was an economic thing, and in no way, shape, or form are we, or at least I'm speaking for myself, am I saying that we should disregard the history of American slavery and like it was an economic thing. And I'm not saying that makes it okay either, but that's what it was. And I think it's important for us to actually have this knowledge and understand that, teaching this amongst the generations to come. Otherwise, it's only going to continue to get diluted more and more.
And everything to do with economic status. And white people that came over here didn't have black people as slaves because they hated black people. It's because they had the access to cheap labor. And who gave them the cheap labor? Other black people did. It's convenient to go back and stop at the white man when it comes to slavery. However, the black man sold their own people all over the world. 2/3, I believe, of the slaves were in South America. A smaller portion of the slaves went to North America, where we live today, call it what we consider the United States of America today. But don't stop at the white man as if they created slavery and they enslaved black people. The black man had them slaved up first, and knowing that most of them wasn't gonna make it over that water. And they sold it to the white man anyway, knowing them black people gonna die under that boat. They the one who helped put them on the boat. They know them black people weren't gonna make it. But the white man is the problem. Hold the phone. Let me play the rest of that view clip, and then we'll go from there. Roll the clip.
700,000 almost Americans died in that Civil War. You know what the equivalent of 700,000 Americans are today? Almost 7 million Americans. That would be the equivalent today. It took years and years of women marching and fighting to get equality. It wasn't until a little over 100 years
die in
ago
the Civil War
that the 18th Amendment was ratified. So for her to casually said...
What about the Voting Rights Act? What about Jim Crow laws?
Right.
I mean, I don't...
The anti-lynching law
we're not
passed the other day.
racist country, but I am the only person on my father's side of the family who has enjoyed full civil rights. Yeah. In the history of my family, and I am 55 years old. So this is not something that happened 600 years ago, okay? And we're still in the fight of our lives to save the soul of this country from the scourge of racism. That is the truth. And
you know, these bees are on there saying they're racism. You're on a show that pays you millions of dollars. Let's walk through the racism there. Who's racist in this situation? The producer? The owner of the show?
Network owner, maybe?
The investors into the show? Who's the racist people that put you black woman up on there and let you talk all that stupid stuff and pay you millions to do it? Like let's walk through where the racist people are at.
And then what bothers me the most is the victim complex as it pertains to that, because it's like I'm watching these successful people that share the same complexion as me, whom are able to make millions of dollars, but they're telling me that I'm not able to do the same, and they're somehow the exception and not the rule. And because of the irony is, it's because of my skin color that I won't be able to do the same thing that you're able to do. I'll never understand that, ever. It'll never make sense.
We're going to go back 70 years ago. We're going to go back 200 years ago. Jim Crow was Democrats. Y'all voted for Jim Crow Democrats. That's what y'all voted for. The Democrat Party was the party of Jim Crow. And you sit here today and you talk about racism, but you're elevating a party that carried the racism in this country. And let me say this. Even in the Jim Crow South, this is where I just really wish I had a historian that had the credentials that can come on here and prove everything that I'm saying to be right. Just like today.
Like Thomas Sowell, right?
I swear it's the same soup warmed over. Today you have racist people in America. You have racist people everywhere. And they come in all shapes, colors, and sizes. It's racist black people just as much as racist white people. Those are anomalies. The average experience of a person that lives in America is nowhere near connected to racism. That's not a everyday experience. And even in the Jim Crow South, you know, this is the funny thing about Jim Crow South. If you listen to black people who had sense, when Martin Luther King was alive, he was very unpopular. And there were black people that wanted to be separated because they had their own schools. They had when Harriet Tubman, when Rosa Parks was riding on the back of a white bus, black people had their own bus line. So they staged a conflict on the white bus instead of them actually utilizing their own bus company and making it big enough to overthrow the white bus line, or for them to have a bus line that they could use on their own. But no, they went through the process of staging an incident. This is what was happening, and why a lot of black people didn't really like Martin Luther King.
I didn't know that the whole thing as being staged or anything like that. I would have to go do some of my own personal research and figure out that for myself. I don't know that to be true at all yet.
Because Martin Luther King was wanting to be with the white man. He was trying to force the white man to accept black people. And a lot of black people didn't want that. They wanted to just be left alone. They didn't want to go to school with white people. They just wanted to be able to go to their schools and have access to teach their children what they needed to know. But Martin Luther King was on something else. And the crazy thing is, I would argue Martin Luther King wasn't that popular amongst black people. Wasn't as popular as he is today. And as popular as he is today, black people don't even believe what he said.
The content of
your character, not the color of your skin, was his dream. Well, he having a nightmare right now because black people have completely forgot about him. They talk about him, they take the day off, they go barbecue on his birthday and celebrate in Black History Month, which is the shortest month of the year, and they forget everything that the man died for. They play his dream every day. Martin Luther King had a dream. Well, fool, you turn his dream into a nightmare because y'all still talking about race and not content.
So a couple of things that I want to point out that I don't know to be true yet. I don't know that the South were the only ones to have slaves. Only the South owned slaves. I don't know that to be true, nor do I know the whole Rosa Parks bus thing to be true. It's interesting. I would love to now go dig and find out whether or not we had our own bus lines and things of that nature. However, I did find this article from Denver Post. I don't know what it say. What year was this? 2005? Okay, it says that, December 6, 2005 at 4:15 p.m. This was updated February 4th, 2023. Let's get to the meat of it. The man on the bus, Nicholas Chris, was not some irritated Alabama segregationalist preserved for history, but a reporter working at the time for United Press International of Atlanta. Oh, wow. He died of an aneurysm at the age of 62 in 1990. Parks died at the age of 92 on October 24th, a few weeks short of the 50th anniversary of her refusal to give up her seat on the bus to a white man. Nicholas Chris, who also worked for the Los Angeles Times and the Houston Chronicle, publicly revealed his role in the picture just once. It was 3 paragraphs in the middle of a 2,183 word article, and he wrote for the Houston Chronicle in 1986. He explained that the picture was taken on December 21st, 1956, the day after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Montgomery's segregated bus system illegal. Really? Actually, the ruling had come a month earlier, but it was not until December 20th that the district court entered the order putting it into effect. He said I'm sorry, y'all. Wow, this is taking me back. He said he boarded bus in downtown Montgomery, and he and Parks were the only riders up front. He wrote, quote, "It was a historic occasion. I was then with the United Press International wire service. A UPI photographer took a picture of Mrs. Parks on the bus. It shows a somber Miss Parks seated on the bus looking calmly out the window. Seated just behind her is a hard-eyed white man. Till this day, no one has ever made clear that it was a reporter, covering this event and sitting behind Mrs. Parks, not some sullen white segregationalist." Let's just scroll down to the quote right here. Quote, "It was completely a 100% staged event," end quote. The biographer said, quote, "There was nothing random about it," end quote. Wow. It says Parks was not the first black rider in Montgomery to refuse to give up her seat. 2 other white women, Claudette Colvin and Mary Louise Smith, had done it in previous months, but Parks' case became the one the legal challenge was based upon. All I gotta say is, wow, you learn something new every single day. Every single day. This is just mind-boggling. I'm taken back by that. I gotta process that. Honestly, I really do gotta process that. But in reference to the View clip, I just feel sorry for the people who fall for the scripted propaganda that they continue to spew, man. Definitely go do your own research, because as you see right now, I'm over here like, what?